Ever since he was selected number 1 overall by the Cincinnati Bengals in the 2020 NFL Draft, Joe Burrow has changed the entire direction of the franchise. The Bengals at one point were one of the most mocked teams in league history. However, over the last 5 years, they have not only gone to a Super Bowl, but established themselves as contenders year in and year out. However, one situation that the team is currently dealing with could spell trouble for not only them and their success in the short term, but also their stature as one of the NFL's Titans, because right now this Trey Hendrickson situation could cook the Cincinnati Bengals forever, and it's all Joe Burrow's fault. Why? I'm going to tell you right here in this video, so be sure to smash that thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. All right, let's dive right in and talk about it. As I said before, Joe Burrow was a godsend for the Cincinnati Bengals. Ever since Carson Palmer departed from the organization back in 2011, despite some playoff appearances by Andy Dalton, they had struggled mightily to establish themselves as a serious contender. However, when Burrow burst onto the scene in his second year, they immediately shocked the world by reaching the Super Bowl, something that the franchise had not done in nearly 30 years. And for Joe Burrow, this not only helped him establish the franchise that he was a part of as a major player, but also was able to put him right up there with the likes of Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes as one of the league's top quarterbacks. And despite the fact that he didn't really help bring home a Lombardi to Cincinnati, Joe Burrow was the guy. There was no more important piece to that puzzle that they needed to keep. In September of 2023, Joe Burrow signed a massive contract extension that not only made him one of the NFL's highest paid quarterbacks, but also helped tie him to the organization for years to come. And that was an essential piece that the Bengals needed. And they also immediately began to spring into action to try to keep other pieces, most notably wide receiver Ja'Marr Chase at Joe Burrow's behest. Of course, Ja'Marr Chase and Joe Burrow have a history going back to their days at LSU, and it seemed like the Bengals had their core, and it would make sense that if you're an NFL team and the overall likelihood is you're only really able to have 3 insanely massive contracts at once, given the salary cap restrictions, you would probably spend that next contract on defense. However, the Bengals faced a bit of an issue, that being T. Higgins, someone who had overplayed his contract year in and year out, established himself as a serious number 1 threat in the wide receiver room, and had it not been for the fact that he was paired up with Ja'Marr Chase, on any other team, T. Higgins would be a wide receiver 1. That just wasn't the case on the Bengals. So the Bengals were faced with a controversy throughout the 2024 season, and it really held things up. And this was all during a time where the Bengals weren't necessarily playing their best ball. In both 2024 and 2023, the Bengals missed out on the playoffs at a 9-8 record. And this was paired up with some injuries they were dealing with, Joe Burrow being knocked out of games, and the rise of the Baltimore Ravens, and somehow the sustained success of the Pittsburgh Steelers not letting up. So for them, they had taken a step back, and instead of trying to go out there, spend money on keeping one of their defensive pieces, someone who we will talk about very, very soon in Trey Hendrickson, they instead chose to keep T. Higgins, which is by no means a bad decision. T. Higgins, as I said before, one of the most productive wide receivers in the entire league, and really helps make that 1-2 punch on offense extremely lethal. The only real criticism you can levy towards it is that it doesn't help the Bengals that much, given the fact that their offense, as good as it was, only got them to a 9-8 record. And one of the biggest criticisms that the franchise has faced is their lack of ability to stop the other team from scoring. The Bengals over the last couple of years have been one of the worst defenses as far as points allowed. It just feels like every big time matchup they're in is a shootout. And if that is the way you're going to choose to play ball, that is fine. But then you cannot do what is happening now, in that the Bengals and Bengals fans are complaining about one of their top defensive players who has overplayed his contract trying to get another extension. And that person is Trey Hendrickson. Now, Trey Hendrickson is an absolute beast. This guy has had 17 and a half sacks in back-to-back years. And going back to 2020, he ranks third as far as the most sacks in the league, just behind TJ Watt and Myles Garrett. So needless to say, the man knows how to set the edge. The man knows how to get to the quarterback. And the man knows exactly how to be a top premier edge rusher in the NFL. And you would think that the Bengals would prioritize this. However, that is not the case. They have chosen instead to essentially force Trey Hendrickson to play out the rest of his deal and kind of see where things lie. And the big controversy between these two is that Trey Hendrickson seems to want a longer-term extension, that long-term sustainable contract. And the Bengals, meanwhile, just kind of want to give him a little bit of a short-term deal.
We're just not seeing eye to eye on the structure. It seems that a shorter deal is something that they are pushing pretty hard. That puts us in the same place I was in 2022, where I have to renegotiate the next year, because if goals are the same and playing at a better level than I did last year, then next year we're just kicking the can down the road. So it's something where I think both parties should understand that a long-term contract that guarantees that know that I can continue to play at the level that I have been is a mutual respect, where that's where my values lie, and it also allows me to stop having to negotiate every offseason about something that has been almost 4 years of doing.
And this is probably caused by two things. Number one, the aforementioned cap issues. The Bengals right now are about at $25 million in cap money that they're allowed to have. And right now they also have to deal with other pieces they want to try to keep in the long run. They have to deal with the fact that at some point, these big contracts that they've given out, the likes of Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow, are going to really hurt them in the cap, and they are planning for the future. But number two, the bigger issue for them is that they happen to have probably the brokest owner in the entire NFL. And that is not to say that Mike Brown does not have money, but if we look at where he ranks as far as wealth amongst NFL owners, aside from the Green Bay Packers, who don't even have a real owner because of that whole share thing that they have going on, Mike Brown is the brokest owner in the entire NFL. So the question isn't only will they be able to make it work in the cap, will they even have the money to help try to keep a guy like Trey Hendrickson, who is probably going to command north of $20 million per year to try to keep. And one of the effects of this, if Hendrickson is eventually traded, is the Bengals falling like teams like the Dallas Cowboys historically, or the Tennessee Titans, who have overpaid or paid too many big pieces on offense. And because of that, the defense suffered. Cowboys are probably a great example of this. They gave Dak Prescott a massive contract extension, making him the highest paid quarterback in the entire NFL at $60 million. And they also are planning to re-sign CeeDee Lamb. And part of that led to key pieces like Byron Jones in 2020 and Randy Gregory in 2022 leaving the organization. Talking about the Tennessee Titans, back in 2020, they paid Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill and even traded for Julio Jones. And because of that, stars like Jadeveon Clowney and Logan Ryan on defense were forced to leave the team and look elsewhere. The point is, if you are going to go all in on offense and you are an NFL team, that is totally fine. And that is the game that you play. And the reason I bring up Joe Burrow specifically when I'm talking about being the reason that they're cooked is Burrow was the one who advocated for his receivers to get these big contracts. Now, I'm not saying that Burrow should have just sat there on the sideline and said, we'll see how things played out and just let things play out as they would. However, when you only do that for your offensive players, you only do that for your offensive teammates, and you don't for the defense, don't be surprised when they don't come back. Don't be surprised when they're a little angry, and don't be surprised if you don't stand up for them in the same way you do for your offensive players, that they may resent you a little bit. And that is what has built up in Cincinnati right now. And given the fact that they haven't made the playoffs in a couple of years and that defense has not gotten any better, I don't really see why things should change in the Bengals organization or for the Bengals in their future. The Ravens are still by far the premier team in that division. The Steelers may or may not get Aaron Rodgers. That's still kind of weirdly up in the air, but if they do, you would think that Mike Tomlin would be able to at least do the same thing he was able to do with Russell Wilson last year with a talent like Rodgers. So where does that leave the Bengals? Without a star on defense that they desperately need when you have a division where you're facing Lamar Jackson twice a year and Hendrickson is one of the few guys who's able to get to him multiple times a game, you need him. But the question is, are they going to be able to keep him? There's already rumors about trades. Maybe the Chicago Bears are going to be there. Maybe someone else. But guys, I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think about this situation. Is this all Joe Burrow's fault? Are the Bengals cooked forever? Or am I overstating everything? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, be sure to smash that thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released.